So, for those who don't know, we thought we would take the opportunity of lunch break today to just go over the history of Guerilla Cricket a bit. Because although we've got a lot of supporters who have been with us for a long time, there are others amongst you who may not be aware of the journey that Guerilla Cricket has taken over the last decade. And who better to talk to about it than the only two remaining OGs, the original Guerillas.
Why are we the only two left?
We're like the sort of 10cc of cricket commentary.
Exactly. We can't leave the band. It's like Hotel California.
It's like we're going out on a sort of 70s retro tour
Absolutely.
very shortly.
So, what I wanted to ask you guys first is, I guess we should start from the ashes, if you like, of Test Match Sofa. How much were you guys involved with Test Match Sofa before that?
Well, I was at the start of Test Match Sofa as well.
Right.
Because Dan didn't know how to do any sound. And at the time I was working in TV, had a load of stuff left over, basically surplus TV gear. And he wanted to do it in his summer. And at the time, I was kind of like, I knew, well, what was that? It was 2009. So Soph was 3.5 and Nate was 1.5.
Oh my God.
She was probably pregnant with Lexi.
Oh God.
And the chance of me being able to watch the Ashes at home was 0. So consequently, the idea of being able to watch the Ashes, because it was the first home one after 2005 as well, and we got spanked in the return in 2006-07, and we got whitewashed. And so it was kind of, we've got to win the Ashes back. And Dan had just quit his job. And
you should say Dan Norcross.
Norcross, yeah. Dan Norcross quit his job, and he was like, I'm going to do this thing. Who wants to do it? And I was like, oh, yeah, that sounds all right. I can get to watch the cricket. It'll be fun all summer. So I sort of cobbled together some old gear, planted it in his house, and then we basically just started.
So you became an absent father at the same time?
Yeah, I get a lot of grief for that, obviously. And in those days, he used to drink quite a lot too, so yeah.
But you had a lot of fun.
Had an awful lot of fun, yeah.
My judgment in relation to Test Match Sofa is that, if anything, it was a lot more self-indulgent than Guerilla Cricket.
Well, of course it was. None of us really knew what we were doing. And Dan, you know, you got to remember how technology has changed. That was 2009, and what you could do on the internet. I mean, like, so you had to pay for a server, and you could only probably get 200, listeners going at the same time on a server that costs a lot of money, you know, and all this kind of shit. So the technology was so much less. YouTube didn't really exist in the sense that it does now. Neither did Facebook.
How did you pay for it?
Dan put up the money for it. I mean, it was done in his house, and there were limited costs.
Yeah.
Same as there always are now. You know, you're doing it on a shoestring.
Yeah.
So we found a server and we got it up on that, and then we looked like for tuning. We got in touch because we tried to get on Apple Radio, and they wouldn't let us on. And then you do a few searches and there was TuneIn, and we were like one of TuneIn's really early adopters. We were like a big channel on TuneIn when we first started, and you couldn't get these. You know, you had to have a BlackBerry was the only way of getting TuneIn app. And things like that on your phone. It was. That's how long ago it was. And how much technology has changed in just in those 14,
it's extraordinary,
15 years.
isn't it? Well, I mean, when you started, the iPhone didn't exist.
No, exactly.
And Hendo, when did you first get involved with Guerilla?
I think it was 2010, and I found myself at a bit of a loose end. I'd kind of left the Times for a short while under dubious circumstances.
Under a black cloud.
Under a black cloud. And I was doing bits and bobs of book editing, but not very much. And I'd started a cricket blog like everyone had at that point. And through that, I came into contact with someone you might have heard of before, Jared Kimber. And he... Well, actually, no, I'd known Jared, I suppose, for about a year by then, because we'd taken part in a game called the Blogging Ashes in 2009, which was played at Barnes Cricket Club. And I can't even remember who won. But
you get any runs?
Yeah, but you had to retire at 30.
Oh, I bet that annoyed you.
Like that. Well, it always does, because that happens in a lot of games. But I chatted with Jared. I'd had a couple of books published, and I knew that he wanted to publish one, so I put him onto my publisher. And through that relationship, I very vaguely had become aware, it's just in the back of my mind that there was something going on with a commentary service, and I have to say I'm not a huge lover of TMS. I wouldn't say I wasn't a lover of it. I was in days past, and it's just I didn't listen to it a lot because I watched most of my cricket on TV. So it wasn't really a dislike of it or anything like that. And so I suppose I like TMS, and I just thought this is just going to be a bunch of amateurs. Which it was, of course.
Absolutely.
But Jared put me in touch with Dan. He said he knew I had some time on my hands, and I rang a man called Dan Norcroft, as I thought he was called. He was in his garden when I spoke to him, and anyway,
glass of wine in hand.
Almost certainly. But then my first listen to Test Match Sofa was basically I switched it on and I heard a Scouse accent that one or two of you might be familiar with, and I have to say, although I'm not a big fan of the Scouse accent, that I did think, hang on, a cricket commentary with a Scouse commentator, it has to be something worth getting into, doesn't it? So
were you telling me that Gary Naylor and Jared Kimber were able to occupy the same space at the same time?
Yeah, they were, curiously enough, and it actually is quite strange that those were to be the two main movers in getting me into Test Match Sofa.
There must be more words per minute than any broadcast ever known to man.
Well, that's true, but also, you know, Gary and I constantly disagree on almost everything.
Absolutely.
Regarding cricket. So
but in good humour.
Yeah,
mostly.
Anyway, that's my story, and that's
I'm sticking to it.
That's basically and I've been involved in the Sofa and then Guerilla ever since.
So we won't go through the long sad story of the demise of the Sofa.
No.
But the Sofa was dead and gone. What led to you and the Bear being involved in trying to reincarnate something similar to it?
Well, that was the meeting, actually, at the end of Test Match Sofa. Some of us, you got given a share, didn't you? I got given a share.
Yeah, we all got given shares when
the cricketer took us over, there was a few of us had shares, and the shares were actually, you know, there was only about 500 shares in the company or whatever, and each share was worth like 180, 250 quid or whatever. Katie had about 4 shares or something, and me and you had a share, and someone else had a share. I'm not sure if Atif did. Anyway, we went to a meeting with the cricketer in which Neil
Robinson,
Richardson, wasn't it?
No, Robinson, I think.
Oh, I can't remember.
He was previously chief executive at Leicestershire. Yeah.
And his missus was that Tory fucking MP.
Anna Soubry.
That's it. Anyway, so we went to this meeting. And they were like, "Oh, we don't want to carry on. We're gonna give it a break right now." Blah 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 blah. And we said, "Can we give you our shares back and get?" Because we wanted the Twitter feed essentially, because Twitter was big at the time, and we had like 24,000 followers. So we said, "Okay, if we give you the shares back, and we get Guerilla Cricket, Test Match Sofa, the name, and the Twitter feed, and the Facebook page and shit like that," and they were dead against it. They were like, "No, we don't want to do that. We just want to buy back your shares, and you can't use the name, and we prefer it if we don't really want to broadcast, so you can't really do anything." And like the four of us, it was me, you, and Atif, wasn't it? And maybe Sherwood and Katie.
Well, I think it was you and me. I mean, I was.
Katie was definitely instigating it.
Well, if I know you, Bear, if somebody tells you can't do something, it's almost certain to make you want to do the opposite.
Precisely. I think Hendo's the same. And we went down to a coffee shop, didn't we, outside?
Do you know? I honestly don't remember that.
I mean,
I had sort of mixed feelings because I think that there were a lot of people who thought that without Dan, you know, he was such a focal point of the program, in the sense that, you know, like in the Guerilla incarnation, at the end of the day, we'd round up and we're off within 5 or 10 minutes at the most. I mean, there would be an inquest at the end of the day with Dan, wouldn't there? Like 45
especially when he'd
minutes.
had a lot of wine during the day.
Especially when he had a lot of wine, and you just think, we just want to get to the pub,
yeah,
you know, and chill. But we had to sort of put up with that. And I do remember saying to Dan, if you're going to the BBC, can you take me with you? And, well, I won't go into the story, but there is a long story involving that. However, my feeling was that there was always something in this. And I think I was torn. If there was the opportunity to go to the BBC, yeah, obviously anyone would like that in some respects. But I believed in this. And I think, in a way, I was massively disappointed that Dan didn't anymore.
Yes.
And I felt...
Dirty sellout.
I mean, I didn't object to it in one way, because I know that he could see other people making moves in their careers, like Jared was getting work with Cricinfo, one or two other people involved were doing things, and so he felt at that point that was his opportunity to get into full-time broadcasting. And whatever we say, he is a great commentator. He's a very, very, very good commentator, but I just felt there was mileage in this, and I was just disappointed. I really wanted to prove there was mileage in this. And at the time, I think we had some absolutely excellent, and I'm not saying we haven't got now, but I think the problem now is that we don't manage to get people as often as we want. But at the time, we had some brilliant commentators. I mean, you saw Manny, Ralph, Atif, Rob, Deverell was another guy.
We had people like
Ben.
And the other thing was the one thing that Dan could do that I have to say that me and Hendo aren't so good at is buttering people up and getting Ponzi people in. I mean, he
getting
was,
Ponzi people in.
Well, I mean, he went to Oxford and he had all those fucking
Didn't
connections.
Katie manage that too?
Well, she did for a certain degree, but they were all bloody academics who were really quite Ponzi. They were fun, to be fair, and there were a lot of good people she got. And I mean, she got, what's his name, the writer who wrote the book about Pakistan cricket.
Peter Oborne.
Yeah, and people like that.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, she did get people like that in the early days, so that was cool. But I mean, Dan was the hinge on that. Now, I was never involved in that. I've always been the sort of technical drive. And I'm with Hendo. I thought it had million miles left. And this is where me and Dan were on completely opposite ends of the scale. I'd been working in TV for 15 years. I was fed up of the fucking brown nosing. I was fed up of all the shit that goes along with production and TV and media. It was actually driving me mad. And the fresh air that was Guerilla was you could just be yourself.
Yeah.
And we were all quite knowledgeable about cricket, and we all really enjoyed it. And I thought by that time we had a formula and a way it worked and all these kinds of things.
So you had this meeting in the coffee shop, and you were pissed off with being told you couldn't do anything. So what did you do straight after that?
We decided just to carry on, and we didn't have anywhere to go, did we? So we came up with a name, and then at that time we were in the Sports Night Live studios, is where we just left off with Guerilla Franklin and what's his name?
Michael Franklin
and his son, who was
of course David Franklin.
David was and Michael really liked us, and he was just trying to get things going. So we approached him and said, look, Michael, we want to carry on doing what we're doing. Can you offer us the space again? And he said yes. And that was 2014, wasn't it? First series,
2014.
So we're actually only there for about 6 months, aren't we?
You had a producer, didn't you?
No, not when we became Guerilla. Well, we got a whole bunch.
We got a variety.
We
of
got a whole
producers.
bunch of students, didn't we?
Even people that would get up sort of at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning and get a bus up from Somerset or Devon or something. And
we put a call out, and we had about 10 in for the first series we did.
So what was the very first match you did? Can you recall?
It was the England-India series, 2014. Test
the
series.
very, very first test match was the most boring test match in history.
Yeah. But
rolled snot.
So you said before that the Sofa had 25,000 followers on Twitter. How did you go about building up a following for the Guerrillas?
Well, Hendo went through everyone.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, there's so many things you forget when you've. I mean, I was literally going and picking up. Having once, made the Guerilla Cricket account, I was going through the Test match Sofa tweeters and just sending them DMs.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're
and
here.
one by one. But the thing is, you couldn't do that. You could only do 200 in one day.
Yeah.
You weren't allowed to do any more. So, it was a painstaking process, and I certainly didn't get anywhere near doing all 20. I think it was more than that. I think it was about 29,000.
It was
actually.
a lot. I mean, that was the most annoying thing about not being able to
Losing
take
the
Test
name
match
and
over
that,
name
yeah.
was the Twitter account at the time, because Twitter was so important in those days,
And I think that there were a lot of people saying that without Dan it would flop.
Yes,
And,
which annoyed me as well.
Which annoyed me a lot.
But you still had a big rota of people wanting to commentate, didn't you?
Yeah, but it did fall off once. And there were a lot of people who were on the periphery who were involved who I thought similarly and were a kind of Dan's people, if you like. I mean, I don't know about you, Hendo, but I certainly felt that when we moved, and I thought that was going to be a problem. But I think getting the likes of Sherwood and Atif and Katie on board at the beginning was kind of important to proving the point, and the fact that they wanted to carry on was important as well. And get Manny back, and then Fred met us, didn't he? Quite early on.
I think Fred was
very early,
right at the end of the sofa. You'd come out and you'd go to the jet lag, and Fred would be sitting there.
Yes, exactly.
He just sort of ingratiated himself into the lineup.
So when did you move to the jet lag to start?
Well, that was for the 2015 Ashes, wasn't it? Summer Ashes.
How did that come about? I mean, not many bars would say, "Yeah, come and do this shit."
Well, we used to drink there all the time,
right.
And because we were obviously upstairs, and we basically sharing the studio with these racing guys, and then they wanted to charge us for the studio, didn't they? And all this kind of shit started happening, and it started getting a bit queasy, and we didn't have anywhere to go, and so we went down to the guy downstairs and said, "Look, we want to do the Ashes in the summer." And he was a sports bar, he was a Kiwi, and we said, "Could we broadcast from here?" And he was like, "Yeah, fine." So. That was the most alcoholic Ashes I've ever had.
You had a lot of fun though, didn't you?
I had an awful lot of fun, but Christ, it didn't do my liver any good.
Yeah, but I've got to say, listening to it in Australia, it was a lot of fun listening to.
I can imagine.
Especially when you had there was a bloke called Henry from Australia.
Oh yeah,
that was pretty much on the first day, I think.
Yeah,
on the first
hilarious,
test, anyway.
Henry,
he was called Henry Coventry, and he was from Queensland somewhere. What was it? I forgot what all the fuss was about now.
Oh well, he was a man. He thought that they were going to slaughter us, didn't they?
Was it that
people were going to get loads of runs?
And then there was that Trent Bridge test, wasn't there, where Brody went through?
Well, yes, exactly.
That's right. Goodness me, yeah. 8 wickets and all bowled out for 66. Was it something like that?
Yeah.
67.
But I think one of the weirdest stories really about that is the very first day of the Ashes from the jet lag. Was also, and you'll know about this, Messi, was it called the State of the Union?
Oh, yeah.
Is it State of the Union, or is that the address they do in America?
That's the American one.
What is it? State of Origin.
Oh, State of Origin.
State of Origin Rugby League, yeah.
Yes.
And so basically, obviously...
The bar was full of Aussies.
Well, the bar always got a lot of people in for this, so they put us into a tiny little corner at first.
Yeah.
And so there was the England-Australia Ashes, first day of the Ashes, and all the Aussies in there were watching bloody rugby league.
Yeah, exactly.
Madness, I tell you. Madness. But, of course, then we spread out a little bit, and it was a bit more manageable.
It was
throughout
pretty fucking messy
series.
by the third session.
Mate, I was absolutely bladdered most days, and I was spending about 60 quid a day on beer, even though he's supposed to be giving us a discount.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. We're supposed to have a little card.
We did, but it gave us a bit of discount. We were still spending shitloads of money.
Fuck. So by the end of that series, had you built a decent base of followers? Because Twitter was the key then, wasn't it?
We were getting there by then, but I think on a passion project you can't always rely on figures. You're not quite sure what figures you're getting. And
were you raising any money?
In those days, no.
We must be. We weren't crowdfunding, surely.
No, we weren't.
Oh, we were crowdfunding by series, I think, weren't we?
Yeah, we did have the GPL, and we were sort of crowdfunding by series. But we didn't really have any money, did we? So that's why we were relying on that. And then we went from there to Katie's flat. For how long were we in Katie's flat? For about 2 years, I guess. No, about a year and a half.
Year and a half. Yeah.
At which point, Katie wanted us out.
I'm not surprised.
It was a lot of fun in Katie's flat.
I went to 2016, I think, I
Yes.
went to broadcast in Katie's flat with the South Africa series in South Africa.
That was a good series. I enjoyed that.
And but the place was a fucking pigsty.
Well, yeah. That's how,
But
it was
I mean,
worth about $5 million, though.
Oh, Jesus
It was,
Christ.
it was right in the middle of fucking Earl's Court, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Pub at the end of the road. 2 pubs at the end of the road, actually. It was quite a handy place to be. And we were trying all sorts of things there. We had that fucking... What was that thing we were doing on the balcony at the end of the day?
Oh, Guerilla.
Guerilla.
That actually was quite good.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we were trying all sorts of things then, weren't we, to try and get an audience.
Yes.
Yeah, well, just before you go on, I would say to anybody listening to this, if you look through our YouTube history, you will find a lot of instances of Guerilla, often involving Atif, on the balcony there, and some of them are a lot of fun. So, yeah, have a look through that if you're looking for something else to
We
watch.
had a little format for it, didn't we? We had certain questions.
I can't remember. I do remember interviewing Isabel Duncan.
Yes.
Who was the sort of writer of, I can't remember the name of her book, but it was Skirting the Boundary, that was it. Which was like a history of women's cricket. And of course then she was on Guerilla for a while, and then she got offered county work with the BBC. And I have to say, actually, the BBC improved their commentary enormously, so they must have a very good training program, let's put it that way.
I think they do.
Better than our training program, anyway,
very
which
much
is basically sit down there
Sit
and
down and
commentate.
talk.
Yeah.
So I knew that we needed to be out of Katie's, and I said, so the deal was, when we moved to Sydenham, the deal was this. I was going to put the flat up on the market, and we could do it from Sydenham whilst it was on the market. I assumed it would sell. Of the proceeds of the sale, I would put 10 grand of the proceeds of the sale into rent for something for Guerilla Cricket. If it wasn't self-sufficient after the 10 grand was spent, that was it. No more Guerilla Cricket. And that was in 2000. Well,
16.
we moved in there at the beginning of 2000. Well, sort of March, April, May 2016. Then, of course, the fucking Brexit referendum happened, and the housing market went completely fucking dead. And at that point, I was like, okay, if we're going to stay there. And then interest rates, they were still through the floor. So the actual mortgage was really quite cheap. And at that point, it was like, okay, if we're going to do this, I'm not paying for us to stay here. We've got to raise money. And that's when we started doing Patreon. And quickly, we actually got up to about $1,300 a month on Patreon. And it was paying for the mortgage. And so suddenly it was like, okay, well, I'm not making any rent out of this, and that's part of my income. But I was doing okay. And therefore, we can stay here as long as I'm not paying for it.
Yeah.
And none of us are paying for it. We don't have to put any money in. We can stay here. I mean, that's cost me 100 grand in rent over 10 years that I didn't receive. But it was worth it at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So we stayed there, then we stayed there. And it grew and grew and grew. And we are where we are now.
Well, yeah, there's a hiccup in that process, though, because COVID hit.
Well, COVID hit.
So
yeah.
what did Guerilla do when COVID hit? And what changed?
Well, I remember the bear was. I mean, I everyone knows that I'm not particularly astute when it comes to technical.
I think you'd play down
aspects.
your expertise.
I don't think
I
he
think
does.
I do. Yeah. But I mean, Zoom had sort of come on the scene, and I think the bear must have mentioned that it was technically possible to commentate through Zoom, but I got the feeling that Bear was quite reluctant to do so.
Yeah, so did I. 'Cause I
And,
suggested it too.
Yeah.
Well, mainly because we were so used to being in a studio.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure it would work. Really.
And I think I had to sort of cajole him a little bit and convince him. I mean, Tony will always say, since he got involved, that with the bear, the first time you ask the bear to do something, he turns it down flat without even thinking about it. Second time, he goes, then you provide a reason, and suddenly the bear thinks, "Oh, yes, okay," and then the energy erupts, and something happens.
That's what I was going to say about the bear. The bear is, in my experience, a doer. Once he's going to do something, he fucking does it.
Well, but you've got to come up with a solution. The immediate thing is, oh, fuck, how am I going to do that? No. And then I'll think about it and do a little bit of research on the internet and go, oh, actually, maybe I can do it. I just need to get this, that, and the other. And then I'll look at whether we can afford it and go, oh, actually, I can do this way. I mean, with us, it's always been on an ultra low budget.
Yeah.
How cheap can you do this shit?
Yeah.
And how can you manage it?
Well, also, if you think about it, we have done certain series where we've crowdfunded. We've even done Ashes where we've crowdfunded for the whole series.
Yeah.
We crowdfunded for doing the Ireland Test match. which of course I suppose is Guerilla's peak in
Guerilla.
one sense. And you can look at COVID and say that that's had an effect. But in 2018, I really thought that was when we were going to take off. And maybe it was because COVID came quite quickly behind that we didn't. However, of course, it's enabled us to expand in one sense, to certainly expand our contributors.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
yourself.
Yeah.
Obviously you'd been a listener to The Sofa. You'd enjoyed Guerilla Cricket.
Yeah.
You loved my book about Australia, which is most important. And so we had you, and now you are an absolute mainstay. I mean, if you're not, I mean, it's great to have you in the studio, of course, but if you're not on the end of Zoom when I was getting into Sydenham on a whatever time
Something
of the
was wrong.
morning, it just felt wrong.
Exactly.
It felt wrong. And so, we've got people like Forthy, we've got Cat, we've the White Line Wireless, we've been able to team up with them in Australia.
And Hendo from India.
And Nindo, and
We've had Brian in America.
Brian, of course, Brian Barish, yes.
Yeah.
Where's he been recently?
He was on yesterday.
No, Brian Barish.
Yeah, it was on YouTube.
Was he?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good
He's
to know.
busy with Cricket America now.
Right, and there was like a Nick who I noticed was tweeting in, Nick Martin, who used to come in occasionally. I think he was based in Doncaster, but he would occasionally come in, and he was quite good. And I suddenly saw his name the other day on. I suppose it could be another Nick Martin, but I saw his name, and it's always really nice when you see that. You see a new or a name from the past who's it's like the prodigal son, isn't it? He's sort of suddenly coming back.
Yeah, there are people still finding us now. It's quite true. So we've moved now into a studio that is fully funded through patrons. Although we're still on the smell of an oily rag if we need a new microphone or something. I take it.
Well, we do have a little bit of funding, so the funds, I make sure that we don't spend them, basically. I mean, we just spend on rent, and then the rest goes into a pot, and then every once in a while we need to get something new. But I mean, I buy everything second hand.
I want to go back, if I can, to something I forgot to ask you, but I'm really interested in. The theme tune that we play at the start of every day's play is, I think, inspired. Can you give us a bit of a story about how that came to be?
I certainly can. I already have told you off air, but for the interest of those people listening, because of the sofa, as we spoke about earlier, Test Match Sofa finishing, and the fact that we were going to be called Guerilla Cricket was a suggestion that we're outside the mainstream and outside the tent pissing in, revolutionary in that respect. No regarders of legalities, generally speaking, unless it's the ICC coming down on us really hard, like they did with our T-shirt. But yes, basically what happened was, having decided upon a name, I wrote a smallish manifesto, basically, which I intended to give to James Sherwood, who was one of our fine jinglers in the Sofa years and early on, and is the writer of a lot of that particular theme tune. So I gave him this manifesto, and I wanted him to sort of talk it. He is a sort of stand-up comedian, and he has presence. And I wanted him to sort of speak it, but then he thought, well, no, I think this is how it worked. I'll put it to music, or I'll use some of the ideas. Like, I mean, I remember the whole thing about they decapitate us, but we just grew another head. That was, I was quite proud of that one. And so that formed the body of the theme tune in terms of lyrically. And then I think Sherwood himself had the idea of matching famous revolutionaries with obscure cricketers, let's put it that way, to some extent obscure cricketers.
With some fairly generous rhyming.
Yes. So what have we got? We had
Lenny Pascoe or somebody.
Yeah, I can't remember who.
Why don't you play the short version for us, Ben?
Yeah, I can.
I'm not sure. Will it get? Do we get that?
Short bed, yeah.
Let's have the short bed.
Chairman Mao.
Jamie Howe.
Jamie Howe.
There you go.
Ho Chi Minh.
Asif Din.
Asif Din, Václav Havel, Graham Saville.
That's a good one.
That is a good one.
No surrender.
Percy Fender.
Guerilla Cricket.
Which, of course, is on one of our T-shirts, and
Yeah.
then Tony came along and did a sort of multi-program piece about Percy Fender
Yeah.
not so long ago.
He was doing an auction.
So basically, that was the story. If people remember the sofa, I think we had a sort of version that was a knockoff of the 10cc hit "I Don't Like Cricket."
Yeah.
Yes.
But this was all
An
original
original.
work. It was
I had visions of you all sitting around, absolutely off your faces, coming up with ideas for the rhymes. I'm
No, that went round on
disappointed.
an email chain.
that went
didn't it?
yeah, absolutely. That was as I said, it was something that we did put out to the wider Guerilla or the potentially burgeoning Guerilla audience. Yeah.
Well, there's been a few things that have sort of grown from just the broadcasting. I mean, originally it was just broadcasting England games. I think it's fair to say that there's been coverage of quite a lot of series. Australia, India comes to mind. And of course World Cups since then, which is a major exercise in terms
Yes.
of getting the people in. I think one person who's been absolutely crucial to all that has actually been Tony Bishop, who's been the Rodermeister in bringing that together.
I've never been so relieved as when Tony offered to do the rotors. You see, the thing about Tony's rotors is that he knows how to do them really neatly and put them into little boxes, whereas I just used to put them on the email, and you know how things would just turn round,
Yes.
go round, and so people were confused.
Yes, yeah.
But I think Tony came on board in 2017, I think it was. Not really, but it was Dan Norcross, of course, who was the kind of conduit who introduced us, because he was chatting away to Tony, and then he said, he must have said something about commentary, and he said, well, this is the man to talk to, Hendo. And I tried to describe to Tony what Guerilla Cricket was, and the first thing I said, I think, was that Guerilla Cricket is for those people who don't like TMS. And his first response was, why wouldn't anyone like TMS? And I saw his point, and I thought, well, this is going no further. But actually, we sort of exchanged numbers or something like that, and he came on board, and he's a complete convert now. I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't still appreciate TMS,
Yeah.
but he absolutely loves doing this, and he's driven us forward in a lot of ways. I mean, he's been invaluable in terms of when we've attempted to make this into a proper business, which would pay us some money.
So given that this doesn't pay either of you any money, in fact it impoverishes both of you,
Absolutely.
why the fuck do you do it?
Still got a passion for cricket. I actually like being on air, I guess, now. I mean, there was a time where I refused to start the show, wasn't there, really?
Oh yeah, you've grown in that sense.
I didn't like being... I never wanted to be the front man. I always thought of myself as technical, and I liked sitting here talking bollocks about cricket. But
Yeah.
I think there was a point around about... I've got to say this, I suppose. There was a point around about COVID and stuff when Knackle was in, and everyone was getting to introduce the show, and I was getting really frustrated with how people were introducing it sometimes. And someone who wasn't very good was being picked because I basically said I didn't want to do it, and I said, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to do it. And yeah.
So it's fair to say that fundamentally you have a lot of fun doing it still.
Yeah, it's not so much fun. I mean, we've all grown older as we've been doing this, and you begin to feel it more. And the funny thing is, having done God knows how many overseas Ashes we've done now. Yeah, doing that through the night it doesn't get easier. I think it gets harder. I think it gets a lot harder, especially when England have been, well, since 2010-11, which was great during the sofa days. I mean, I don't think we've had a successful Guerilla Ashes away win, have we?
No, you
No.
haven't, no.
No. So we've sat through, whitewashes, and when you're putting that much effort in overnight, it's absolutely exhausting.
Yeah, I get that. By the same token, there is something about the misery in company thing, isn't there?
Oh yes, yes, of course.
And the truth is that for me, I do get a lot of fun out of it, but most of all, I get a sense of community out of it. Being involved with a whole lot of people who I would never have known otherwise. And I've been travelling the country, meeting some of them who I've never met before, and they are every bit as nice as I ever expected them to be.
Well, we're basically the fourth emergency service.
Absolutely.
That's exactly
Especially
right.
for cricket.
Before we close off, because they will come back from tea in 5 minutes or so, I'd like to know the individual highlight for each of you of Guerilla in all your time on air.
Well, I think it's quite easy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got to be.
It's got to be Ireland, hasn't it?
It's got to be Ireland.
So tell us a bit about the story with Ireland, actually.
Well, it was
because
Dave Brooke, wasn't it?
Dave Brooke, who came on board when, in fact,
Yeah, I mean, we
just
met,
that Ashes series
it
in
was-
17-18.
Exactly. We met him, and he was a real live wire. I mean, we did that night in the bloody
Grouch Show Club.
Grouch Show, and I mean, I'll never fucking forget that. Dave said, "Yeah, we can do it in the Grouch Show," and so I think you helped me get all the shit.
Yeah.
So I grabbed the entire studio, took it to the fucking Grouch Show, and Dave said, "Yeah, you can do the whole test match from here." We got in there. It took me fucking hours to set it up. We had a great night, but we didn't leave there till like 10 in the morning, and I took it all up there during the day before, set it all up. We got back there for the start at 11. We finished at 8 in the morning. Then they gave us breakfast, and we were all a bit fucking hammered anyway. And then I had to get it in a cab because we were all pissed. So we got to dump everything in a cab at 11 in the morning and then take it back to the flat, get it back in the flat. Then I had to set it all up and be on air again at 11 at night because the guy said, "Yeah, well, after the lights it can't be in here for the rest of the test."
Yeah, so it was.
So how did this lead to getting the rights to the test match in Ireland?
Well, I think it was
Dave
basically.
knew some dude,
Yeah,
didn't
Dave
he?
knew Warren Dutram, who was the
That's right.
chief executive.
Right.
And we sort of heard rumours that the
Nobody got the radio
BBC
rights.
wasn't really pushing for it that much, and that we were in touch with I think they were called Pitch, the company that was brokering the rights, if you want to call it that. And I think it got to about a week before the test match itself, and by that point, I don't think anyone had confirmed that they wanted to do it or had offered any significant money. And
So we offered 500 quid.
well, I think we offered $1,000 in the end, didn't we? We got it for $1,000, I thought.
I thought it was 500.
Oh, wait,
I
I
seem
don't
to
know.
remember paying.
Okay, well, whatever it was, we got it, and we
Packed everything into two cars.
We packed everything into 2 cars. We got the ferry over
From where was it? We got it from
Holyhead,
Anglesey.
Holyhead or somewhere like that. Yeah, and it's fantastic. As someone who's normally tired the whole time, I can't believe that I got through that week. Actually,
and
we had
considering the first day was entirely rained out.
Well, I think the thing about you may not think about Guerilla as being significantly prepared, but sometimes we are very professional.
Yeah.
The Bear is not a man who likes to do too much background and research, but Tony certainly is. I do or did, and we really prepared for it well. And I remember, I think one of the things that set that off so well on the first morning was that with Roger Pineapple, Roger McCann, who was Irish, a big follower of Irish cricket, and was on Guerilla for some time now, unfortunately back in Belfast, I think. I sort of wanted him to do an introduction, a big introduction about Irish cricket, and I wrote him a sort of again a manifesto, almost a sort of introduction that he could do in his wonderful Irish brogue, and he just came back with something completely different, which was all Rog and much better than what I had written. Obviously, had the sort of heartfelt element that I wouldn't necessarily have been able to produce, and I think people really liked that, didn't they? They loved that introduction, and I think from then on, and we got a bit of publicity in the press.
Did lots of interviews with lots of people who.
Well,
were,
yeah.
We interviewed everyone connected with it.
that's-
Irish cricket.
And the other
basically.
thing, the funny thing is, when we had the rights, suddenly everyone wanted to speak to us.
It's
Yeah.
interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't know whether COVID's had COVID, but if I'm to end this on a slightly disappointing level, I feel annoyed and aggrieved that we've been subsequently kind of ignored.
Yeah.
You know,
I get it.
It's not so much that, you know, we want fame and fortune, although we do want fortune. It's more that we want more people to be listening and,
Yes.
and just getting it out there
Yep.
that we're actually quite good.
Yep.
We all know our cricket. It's hard if you don't have a big name journalist writing a big article about you.
Exactly.
And
So-
we don't have that anymore.
To
So,
the point-
friends, we need to get the word out there. Just more. Just let people know. We've got to wind up now because the cricket's about to start again. But I just want to say thank you to you, Bear. Thank you to you, Hendo, not just for this, but for 10 years of actually making this happen. It's been fantastic. And may we be here in 10 years more, but with 10 times the audience.
I was
Thank
gonna
you
say-
both very much.
Well, I was going to say, it may be only 10 years, but it feels like a decade to me.
Reminder that the only reason we're able to be on air is through the support we receive from our wonderful Patreons. If you'd like to support us, please go and have a look at patreon.com/Guerilla Cricket, where you can choose one of several tiers with various benefits.